Welcome to Stories with Grandma Selene, where African wisdom meets modern life. Today, we journey into the story of Olamide and Bola, a friendship that began under the mango trees of Lagos and was tested by life, distance, and ambition. Stay close, open your heart, and remember, some lessons are learned not through anger or envy, but through grace and persistence. In the heart of our old neighborhood, where children played until their feet turned brown with dust, Bola and I grew like twin seeds planted side by side. Olamide was the quieter one. Bola, she carried the sun in her laughter. Her voice was the kind that could convince a tree to dance. Our mothers were as close as rappers and market days, so automatically we became inseparable. We walked to school together, shared groundnuts under the mango tree during break, and even built fanciful dreams of when we would blow in the future. Bola wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to create clothes that would walk on runways. Life was simple then, happiness was cheap, and friendship didn't need permission to flourish. Looking back now, I realize some friendships are written in pencil, not ink. Beautiful but easily smudged by the rains of life. But that time we didn't know. All we knew was that we belonged to each other's world. We were two girls with bright futures, though life was already sharpening its knife. Bola and I had a habit of sitting outside after school, watching people pass by and guessing their stories. If we saw a woman in corporate clothes, Bola would whisper, "Ola, that's me in the future. Fine babe, small waist, big job." I would laugh, sketching imaginary dresses with my finger on my thigh. "And I'll be sewing your outfits, senator's wife standard." Sometimes we fought, sometimes we cried, but by evening we were always friends again. Even our teachers used to say, "Where you see Bola, check around, Olamide is there." It shocked many people how different we were. She was bold, outspoken, full of ginger. I was the planner, the quiet observer, but we balanced each other the way Gary balances sugar. Our dreams kept us going, two young girls imagining a future far bigger than our tiny corner of Lagos. And in our innocence, we thought those dreams would grow side by side forever. But destiny doesn't always ask for our consent before dividing paths. The day life changed came quietly, without warning. I returned from school to see my mother sitting outside, her wrapper tied carelessly, her eyes swollen. "Ola, pack your things," she said. "We are leaving this place." My father had lost his job. Everything collapsed like a weak building. Rent accumulated, insults flew from the landlord's mouth, and suddenly the life we knew was no longer ours. Bola cried when she heard. "Ola, you can't leave, how will I cope?" I hugged her tightly, trying not to break. "I will still visit," I promised, but even as I said it, my heart tugged. Reality is a thief, it steals things quietly. That night it stole the comfort of everything I knew. Our new house was in the slumps of Lagos, a world far from our old life. Narrow streets, muddy waters, crowded rooms, and constant struggle. But even there, hope can grow. I just didn't know how long it would take for our friendship to feel the first crack. Leaving Bola felt like leaving half of my childhood behind. She tried to be strong, but tears betrayed her. "We'll still talk every day, right?" "Of course," I answered. But life doesn't always obey promises. The distance was more than kilometers, it was lifestyle, opportunity, and environment. Our new place smelled of kerosene, sweat, and survival. People shouted, children played in gutters, generators buzzed like angry bees. It was rough, but my parents tried to mask their pain with forced smiles. That year, Bola wrote her WAC and went straight into the university. I couldn't join her. We simply didn't have the money. Still, I held on to my future one stitch at a time. Slowly, our calls reduced from daily to weekly, to once in 2 months. Not because we stopped caring, no, life simply dragged us in different directions. But even in the slumps, my dream did not die. It whispered to me every morning, "Olamide, keep going." And I listened. The slumps were loud, chaotic, and unforgiving, but they were also a furnace, burning away weakness and molding strength. Every morning I woke to the sound of women hawking, buses honking, and arguments that began before sunrise. Yet somehow I grew. I learned how to survive, how to adapt, how to keep my dreams alive even when the environment tried to bury them. I worked in a small tailor's shop as an apprentice. The owner, Mama Rakia, was a tough woman with a softer heart than she pretended. "You unlearn, Abai, bring your brain come, sewing no be for lazy people." I swept, ironed, fetched water and threaded needles until my fingers ached. But I was learning, slowly, steadily. Whenever I remembered Bola, I smiled. I imagined her in lecture halls, wearing fine clothes, carrying big textbooks. I was proud of her, and I hoped she was proud of me too. But sometimes, silence grows between people like a creeping weed. And soon, that silence became a wall. Life in the slumps pushed me to grow faster than I expected. Nothing was handed freely. Every skill, every opportunity had to be fought for. Mama Rakia didn't treat me like a child. She treated me like life would, tough but fair. Look well, she would say, holding a fabric. Cloth day talk, if you listen, ego tell you wetin to do. At first her words confused me, but with time I understood. Sewing wasn't just stitching, it was understanding shapes, stories and people. During breaks I imagined myself running a big fashion studio, my clothes worn by important women. Bola still called sometimes, telling me about university, new friends and hostel drama. I was genuinely happy for her. But slowly her tone changed. She sounded busier, less patient, almost distracted. The calls were shorter. The laughter was forced. And sometimes I felt like she spoke to me the way someone speaks to a distant cousin. Still, I held on to hope. After all, we had survived distance before. Surely we would survive this too. Hope can be stubborn like that. Bola's admission into university was her dream come true. On her matriculation day, she sent me pictures, her in a white gown, smiling like she swallowed sunshine. I stared at those photos over and over, feeling both joy and something else, something I couldn't name. Her world was expanding, mine was tightening, but that's how life works sometimes. One person is climbing while another is crawling. Whenever she visited home, I hoped she would stop by. Sometimes she did, sometimes she didn't. When she came, she talked about course reps, lecturers with big grammar, departmental gist, and boys forming big bros. I listened quietly, smiling when I needed to. She never asked much about my training, and I didn't know how to say, my reality is different from yours. But friendship doesn't always crash suddenly. Sometimes it fades like cloth left too long under the sun, gradually losing color until one day, you realize it's no longer the same. And Bola's colors were already changing. By the second year of my apprenticeship, I became the girl everyone asked for at the shop. I could cut perfectly, shape waists beautifully, and see patterns in my mind before touching fabric. People started calling me Small Madam. Mama Rakia would laugh, leave my apprentice alone, she never ready pay rent for shop. I saved every small money I got. Sometimes it was 200 naira, sometimes 500, but I saved it like it was gold. Meanwhile, Bola was posting pictures in fancy outfits, attending school events, posing beside cars, and hanging out in places my feet had never seen. I liked every post and commented when I could. She rarely replied. Sometimes she would simply say, "Thanks, hun." Hun, a word she never used when we were kids. But I didn't blame her. Life was shaping us differently. She was becoming a woman of class and exposure. I was becoming a woman of skill and survival. Two women, one history, but different destinies. After 3 years under Mama Rakia, I graduated and enrolled in a small but reputable fashion school. It was my first time paying for something major with my own money. I felt like a bird finally learning to fly. Fashion school wasn't easy, we learned everything. Heavy checkmark fabric studies. Heavy checkmark advanced sewing. Heavy checkmark fashion illustration. Heavy checkmark body measurement. Heavy checkmark finishing techniques. I began taking small jobs, fixing zips, adjusting gowns, sewing simple outfits. The little money I earned helped support my family. Bola and I spoke less now. When I tried calling, she would say, "Ola, please, I'm in class," or "I'm busy, I'll call back." But she rarely did. I reminded myself people change, it's part of growing up. But the truth, sometimes it hurt. Still, I pushed forward. I had a dream that refused to die, and I was determined to follow it even if I had to walk alone. Then Bola went for NYSC. That was when the real distance began. At first she updated me on her new environment, her PPA, new friends. But soon her responses grew colder. When I called, she picked like someone forced to answer. Her voice carried irritation she didn't bother hiding. Sometimes she didn't pick at all. Sometimes she replied my messages after 3 days with, "Sorry, I was busy." Busy doing what? If someone means something to you, you create time, but I kept quiet. One day I dialed her number. It rang and rang and rang, no answer. Hours later she sent a text. "Ola, please stop calling too much, I'm not a child anymore." The words cut me, but I swallowed the pain. Little did I know, the deepest cut was still coming. The more I tried to hold onto our friendship, the faster it slipped through my fingers. Sometimes I stared at my phone, wondering if I should call her again or respect the silence. I missed her, not just as a friend, but as the sister life gifted me during childhood. But adults don't always get the luxury of holding on to childhood bonds. Life forces you to negotiate your emotional expenses. Some friendships become too expensive to maintain. Weeks passed without a single conversation. When I finally sent Bola a voice note, she didn't listen to it for 2 days. When she finally replied, her message was barely 2 lines. "Ola, I'm fine, been busy." Busy. That was her new favorite word. I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe she was overwhelmed with NYSC stress. Maybe she was trying to adjust, but deep inside a small voice whispered, "The Bola you knew is changing." I just didn't want to accept it, because accepting it felt like losing a part of myself. One afternoon after finishing a client's skirt, I sat on a wooden stool scrolling through Bola's pictures. She looked happy, glowing skin, straight wigs, fancy shoes. She had entered a world I only saw in movies. My world was still full of fabric dust, sweat and hustle. I sent her a long message. "Bola, how are you? I've been missing you, I hope we are good. I'm not sure what changed, but I'm here if you want to talk." I watched the status turn from delivered to read. And then nothing. No reply. Not even an emoji. A strange heaviness settled on my chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was something like grief, the grief of watching a friendship die slowly, painfully, and silently. I told myself to move on, but the truth is, emotional ties don't break easily. So I waited and kept hopping. And then one day, the message that finally broke me arrived. It came in the evening when the sun had begun to soften. I had just finished eating Gary when my phone buzzed. I smiled, happy to see Bola's name. But the smile died quickly. Her message was long, and every line felt like a blade. "Ola, I'm sorry, but I don't think I can do this friendship anymore. We don't belong in the same class again. You're a good person, but our lives have taken different directions. I wish you all the best." I read it once, twice, a third time. 4 minutes passed, and I was still staring at the words. "We don't belong in the same class again." Those words echoed in my chest like thunder. I felt something collapse inside me, not anger but a deep ache mixed with disbelief. I wanted to reply, but my fingers refused to move. What do you say when someone you grew up with suddenly decides you're not worthy of standing beside them anymore? That evening, I turned off my phone and cried quietly. Friendship shouldn't end like that. But hers did. There are moments in life that stretch time. Those 4 minutes of staring at Bola's message felt like 4 years. Memories of us playing 10-10 under the mango tree, running home from school, sharing snacks, dreaming of the future, they all flashed before me. Now those memories felt like someone else's story. A story that had reached its final page. I wanted to call her to ask what I did wrong. But deep down I knew it wasn't about wrong or right, it was about class, exposure, environment. She had entered a world where poverty was embarrassing and telling someone we're not in the same class was a polite way of saying, "You're beneath me now." It hurt. But pain sometimes becomes fuel. That night after crying, I sat up in bed and made a silent vow. I will improve myself, not to spite Bola but to honor myself. Not to prove her wrong, but to prove that God lifts people in his own time. Those 4 minutes broke me. But they also birthed something new. Healing is not a straight line. It is a slow climb, full of days when your heart still pinches. For weeks I avoided anything that reminded me of Bola. Sometimes I woke up wanting to check her status, then stopped myself. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at life, for making our paths so different that one became ashamed of the other. But gradually I focused on myself. I worked harder at sewing, practiced new styles, watched online tutorials whenever I had data, and even tried sketching designs. The more I worked, the more I realized I had a gift that deserved nurturing. My mother noticed my change. "Ola, this girl I'm seeing now is strong. Don't let anybody make you feel small." Her words warmed me, and little by little my heart started stitching itself back together, just like worn-out fabric finding new strength under a tailor's needle. Life was about to change dramatically for me. But I didn't know. Destiny rarely sends a warning before opening a new door. After weeks of emotional wrestling, I finally found a rhythm again. Bola's absence left a hollow space, but life was slowly filling it with new energy, new focus, new purpose. I began sewing with a kind of hunger that surprised even me. I experimented with bold colors, dramatic sleeves, fitted bodices, and neat finishing. My designs became cleaner, sharper, more confident. Clients started returning. Some even recommended me to their friends. I realized something important. Sometimes, life removes people so your hands can be free to build your own ladder. Every morning I woke up eager to create. Sewing became therapy, each stitch mending not just fabric but my heart. I also enrolled in a part-time evening program. It wasn't a university degree, but it was education. I did not want poverty to trap me again. I attended classes from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., sewing in the mornings and afternoons. Those evenings taught me something new. I was more intelligent than I gave myself credit for. My lecturers praised my work ethic. My classmates admired my resilience. I made new acquaintances. None became close friends, but that was okay. I wasn't lonely. I was growing. My routine became a steady drumbeat. Sew, deliver, attend class, revise, sleep. It was exhausting, but I loved it. There's a sweetness in building yourself from scratch, even when nobody is clapping for you. Some days I got only 4 hours of sleep. Some days I cried because a client complained. Some days I felt overwhelmed. But I kept moving. One late evening after class, my lecturer stopped me. "You're the girl who sews, right?" "Yes, sir." "You are talented. If you keep working like this, life will open for you." Those words stayed with me. I walked home smiling into the night breeze. For the first time in a long while I felt seen, not for where I lived, not for what I lacked, but for what I carried inside me. The slumps taught me survival, sewing taught me purpose, education taught me confidence. And soon, destiny decided to reward my consistency. My lecturer, Mr. Martins, became one of the first people to intentionally push my craft forward. He always wore neatly tailored clothes, so one day I jokingly said, "Sir, let me sew for you now." He laughed, "Bring your best design. If you impress me, I will give you more jobs." I poured my heart into that outfit. I used quality fabric, added subtle embroidery, shaped the shoulders well, and finished the hems with precision. When he tried it on, he stood in front of the mirror for almost 2 minutes. "Olamide, this is professional work." His wife loved the outfit too and asked me to sew 2 gowns for her. That was the beginning. Soon his relatives started ordering. But the breakthrough came when he traveled to Abuja and wore one of my designs to a family event. His son-in-law noticed. "Who sewed this?" "A young girl in Lagos," he replied. "Send me her number." And just like that, the door to Abuja opened. Not by luck, but by preparation meeting opportunity. My first Abuja client was the son-in-law, a young businessman named Tund. He called me one afternoon. "I heard you're very good. Can you handle corporate natives?" "Yes, sir," I said, trying not to let my excitement shake my voice. He sent money for fabric and measurements. I worked on the outfit with prayer in my heart. When I finally delivered it through a logistics company, he called me 3 days later. "This is excellent work. You have talent. I'll introduce you to someone." In Nigeria, that sentence can be life-changing. And for me, it was. Within 2 months, I was sewing for 3 Abuja men. They paid better than Lagos clients, appreciated good work, and didn't price like market women. The extra income helped me support my family, pay my fees, and even start saving properly. Every night I thanked God. Every morning I worked harder. Yet I had no idea, my real breakthrough had not even started. The day I visited Abuja for the first time, I felt like I had stepped into another Nigeria entirely. Clean roads, tall buildings, orderly traffic, people dressed like success itself. Tund invited me to oversee fittings for his friends. He paid for my transport, my hotel, everything. "You deserve it," he said. I felt a mixture of gratitude and shock. To think that just a few years ago, I was threading needles in a shop in the slumps. That weekend in Abuja transformed my business. I sewed for 5 men, all well-connected, all impressed by my work. They didn't just pay, they tipped heavily. Returning to Lagos, I felt like the world was finally noticing me. I increased my price slightly and invested in better equipment. Life was changing. Quietly, steadily, beautifully. While some people changed class by abandoning others, I changed class by building myself. And destiny was only warming up. 2 years passed like a fast-moving bus. Every morning I woke before sunrise, cutting fabrics, stitching, ironing and packaging. Every evening I attended my part-time class, revising and learning new skills. The slumps of Lagos no longer intimidated me. I had learned to navigate them with confidence. My clientele had grown beyond friends and relatives. Now my name carried weight. People whispered about the small girl who sews like a professional. Yet for all the progress, I remained humble. I remembered the hunger, the silence, the loneliness, and the sting of losing Bola's friendship. That memory fueled me. By the end of the 2nd year, I had enough savings to rent a better apartment, one that reflected the woman I was becoming. I hung my first framed certificate on the wall, a reminder that no matter what life throws, perseverance always pays. Moving into my new apartment felt surreal. The space was bright, airy, and mine. It was proof that determination could rewrite destiny. I decorated with simple elegance, some gifts from my family, a few pieces I purchased with my own money. I felt proud walking through the rooms, imagining future clients and events. Every time I looked out the window at the bustling Lagos streets, I reminded myself of the journey. The noise, the chaos, the sweat, it had all been part of my education. And somewhere deep inside, I knew my biggest opportunity was still ahead. It came unexpectedly. A mutual acquaintance introduced me to a senator who needed outfits for a series of high-profile events. At first I was nervous. This was not a small client. This was a person whose influence spanned entire states. But I remembered my training, my persistence, my years of silent grinding. I worked meticulously on every stitch, every lining, every seam. When I delivered the final piece, the senator smiled. "Impressive," he said simply, but the weight of those words carried more than praise, they carried opportunity. From that day I began sewing for more politicians, socialites and high-profile figures. My reputation grew, my income grew, and so did my confidence. The first meeting with the senator was intimidating. Tall, poised and sharp-eyed, he seemed like a man who could see everything, including your soul. I handed him the outfit, my hands slightly shaking. He examined the fabric, the stitching and the fit. Then he nodded. "Very good, you understand class, you understand presentation. I will introduce you to my friends." It was more than validation. It was a launchpad. A single meeting opened doors that years of hard work in Lagos had only hinted at. I returned home that day exhausted but elated, realizing that sometimes life rewards patience with leaps, not steps. True to the senator's promise, introductions followed. Soon I was sewing for his friends, colleagues, and extended network. Each client brought another referral. The extra income allowed me to invest in better equipment and higher quality fabrics. I started hiring a small team of assistants. My small shop was becoming a miniature fashion studio. I thought about Bola during this time. She was still somewhere in the university to career world, but our paths were now diverging so sharply that it was almost unrecognizable. Yet I never allowed resentment. My focus was growth, progress, and the life I wanted. And little by little I was achieving it. By now I was no longer the girl sewing in Mama Rakia's small shop. I was a woman with clients who mattered, a reputation that preceded me, and a life that reflected my hard work. Every morning I woke to design sketches, fabric samples, and measurements. Every evening I reviewed my accounts, planning for future expansions. I had grown into the woman I had imagined under the mango tree years ago, confident, skilled, and independent. Yet humility remained my companion. I remembered the slumps, the cold rejections, the silence from Bola. Those memories reminded me not to forget my roots. Success is sweeter when you remember where you started. 2 years after my Abuja breakthrough, I had saved enough to build my own house. It wasn't the biggest, but it was mine. A solid structure with clean lines, warm colors, and a garden where I could dream peacefully. When the first brick was laid, I felt a rush of pride. Each wall symbolized my struggle, each room represented my persistence, and each nail reflected my sacrifices. I invited my family to see it, and their pride was palpable. My father, who once lost his job, now stood with tears in his eyes, saying, "Olamide, you did it." I smiled. "We did it, Papa, God did it." Life was quiet and steady until a friend invited me to a high-profile party. I wore one of my own designs, bold, elegant, and perfect for the crowd. As I mingled, exchanging pleasantries, I felt a shift in the air. Conversations paused subtly as people noticed my presence. I had entered rooms not just as a guest, but as a brand. Then I saw her. Bola. She was laughing, holding the hand of a tall, well-dressed man. She looked dazzling, the same way I remembered, yet different, polished, refined, and unmistakably someone who had entered another world. When our eyes met, time paused. Memories of childhood, of mango trees and shared secrets flooded me. I approached cautiously. "Ola," she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Bola," I replied, measuring my words carefully. She squeezed my hand, then introduced me to the man. "This is my boyfriend," she said, smiling. I nodded politely, masking the swirl of emotions inside me. Inside, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Life had brought us to the same room, but our paths now spoke volumes. As they walked away, I heard him whisper, "You're my baby." I smiled softly to myself. That one sentence spoke everything without words. Bola had entered a world of comfort, attention, and love, but it was different from mine. I didn't feel envy, I felt confirmation. Life had elevated me differently. My happiness didn't depend on her choices, it depended on my growth, my vision, and the fruits of my labor. I realized that destiny doesn't always make everyone rise together. Sometimes it lifts people in ways they never imagine. And in that moment I understood, I had arrived. Days after the party, I returned to my routine, sewing, studying, and building my brand. Then, notifications began popping up on social media. Bola had seen my posts about my new apartment, my Abuja trips, and my growing clientele. She was shocked, I could tell. People notice what they've lost, and social media is unforgiving in showcasing life's progress. I smiled quietly, not out of pride, but out of quiet acknowledgement of God's timing. Every stitch, every sleepless night, every moment I spent grinding alone had led to this. Some friendships fade because people grow in different directions. Some successes are delayed so that when they arrive, they shine brighter than anyone imagined. I had arrived, Bola was noticing, and I felt no need to prove anything. One morning, I posted pictures from my trip to London, me visiting a client, attending fittings, and experiencing the international fashion world. Comments poured in, admiration, curiosity, and congratulations. Among them, I noticed Bola's subtle likes on my pictures. It was a quiet statement. She saw, she acknowledged, and perhaps she even regretted the distance she had created. But life had taught me to never dwell on what could have been. My success was my own. My story wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong, it was about persistence, patience, and faith. Bola's attention mattered little compared to the journey. Then the phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Bola. I hesitated, then answered. Ola, her voice was hesitant, unsure. Bola, I said evenly. I saw your posts. You've done so well, she admitted softly. Thank you, I replied. She paused. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Things changed and I didn't handle it well. I smiled gently. Life changes people, Bola, I understand. That moment wasn't about rekindling friendship. It wasn't about anger. It was about closure, grace, and the understanding that some relationships evolve, not end in silence. Her voice carried regret, but mine carried peace. Thank you for calling, I said. I've moved forward. And I hope you have too. We exchanged a few polite words before hanging up. No promises, no tears, no recriminations, just the gentle realization that we had both grown but differently. Sometimes the people who leave your life teach you the most important lessons: patience, perseverance, self-worth, and faith. Years later, I reflected on my journey, from the dusty streets of the slumps to Abuja fittings, my first house, and international clients. I realized that life is like fabric. Some threads break, some threads pull tight, and some create a tapestry more beautiful than you ever imagined. Bola had moved into her class, I had moved into mine, and in the end the moral was clear. Grace, resilience, and hard work elevate a person, not envy, not connections, and certainly not the approval of those who left. And as the sun set over Lagos, I smiled, content, fulfilled, and grateful for every stitch that had shaped my destiny. And so, the story of Olamide teaches us a timeless lesson. Life elevates those who persevere, who work quietly, and who allow grace to guide their paths. Friendships may fade, but your destiny is yours to shape. If you enjoyed this tale, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share it with friends and family. Remember, every story carries the wisdom of our ancestors, waiting to inspire you. Until next time, may your journey be filled with resilience, grace, and abundant blessings.